Hello and welcome to Notcast 242. Today is the 20th of October 2022. As you can tell by the title and the t-shirt, this is an unexpected episode because we had some British political history that was made today. The shortest serving Prime Minister of all time resigned. Liz Truss, who by the time that she leaves office next week will have been in power for no more than 52 days, has resigned 6 weeks into being Prime Minister. Never faced a public vote as Prime Minister, never led the party, never been an episode of Doctor Who aired while she's been Prime Minister as well, the first time since Doctor Who started, and the shortest serving Prime Minister in history. Before today, the shortest serving Prime Minister in history died in 1827 of tuberculosis after 119 days, George Canning. And before him, the shortest serving Prime Minister, also left post in 1827, and that was Viscount Godrich. So we have absolutely insane scenes in the British political world today. Yesterday, of course, I think was the straw that broke the camel's very flimsy back. In the 6 weeks that Liz Truss has been Prime Minister, I think she's got through 2 Chancellors of the Exchequer, 2 Home Secretaries. She's announced a mini budget, but it's not been called a budget, so she wouldn't have to face the analysis from the Office of Budget Responsibility. She cut the tax rate for the super rich from 45% to 40%. She announced about £30 billion of tax cuts and unfunded activity. She announced approximately 30 billion of cuts to the UK public sector. She offered to bail out the energy sector, but instead nobody knows what's going on. We genuinely don't know what's going to be happening a week from now. I don't know whether those tax cuts are going to take place. I think they've all been reversed because after Kwasi Kwarteng worked out how he might save the economy on a fag packet without bothering to work out whether it actually stacks up financially, had to fall on his sword and resigned last week. We had Jeremy Hunt as our Chancellor of the Exchequer, who then announced a whole bunch of new fiscal measures, almost all of which, apart from one, reversed the measures which had been announced 38 days previously. This shit is bananas. I've never seen anything like it. I'm a little bit of a politics nerd, as you probably know, although I try not to do it too much on the Notcast because politics can be boring and divisive. But seriously, I'm sat there like the picture of Jon Stewart just eating popcorn, just watching the shit hit the fan. The problem is, I'm in the middle of it. I'm living it. If this was another country, this would be quite exciting. But for the UK, this feels like watching the UK descend into becoming a failed government and a failed state. So all the hallmarks of traditionally declining economies, or what they're called emerging markets, are things such as, for example, high inflation, low productivity, low taxes, high wage increases, spiraling costs. These are all the things that are happening in the UK at the moment, and these are all things that are happening as a direct result of the economic incompetence of the current Conservative Party. Now, if the Conservative Party were a band, thank God they're not, they'd be a jam band, they'd be awful. It would be the stage in their career when, like, you've only got the drummer left and they're doing concept albums about sad pandas or doing musical soundtracks for Disney about animated lions. The Conservatives have been in power for too long. They've become complacent, and they've lost sight of whatever it was that they had to start off with. There's been so many changes in the party. At this point, it feels to me that the Conservative Party are treasuring and prioritising power over politics, which means fundamentally the political party has no actual policies. The policy is let's stay in power. And that's it. And they're offering to the economy is, well, we'll cut taxes for the super rich. So, for example, Kwasi Kwarteng's tax proposal was to cut the top rate of tax from 45% to 40%, which would apply for people that earned over £150,000 or more a year. If you earn over £150,000 a year, by the way, not only are you earning 7 times the median salary in the UK, you are also in the top 2-3% of taxpayers. Those guys are going to vote Conservative anyway, the vast majority of them. They don't need tax cuts. They're trickle-down economics. Trickle-down economics is a discredited economic theory. The richest people aren't going to spend more money in the shops. Actually, it's the people that have the least money that always spend the money. The rich people, I'm not one, despite what my record collection might indicate to you. The rich people do not spend their money. They ferret it away. They save it. It disappears out of the economy and doesn't come back into circulation. If you get maybe up to a 10k, for example, tax cut, when you've got that much money, that's not 10 extra k you're spending in the high street. It's 10 extra k that you're spending in your bank account, resting for a rainy day. Whereas, for example, if I was to be Chancellor, my proposal would have been to raise the minimum tax threshold from from £12,750 or thereabouts to £15,000, which would reduce the 20% marginal tax rate for everyone that on an extra £2,500 for everybody. Now that might cost a fair bit of money, but at the same point, it would put an extra few £100 every year back into the hands of every single person that earns any money whatsoever, and it would be much, much appreciated. However, that's far too much like common sense. Let's cut the tax rate so the people that are earning 7 times or more the median of anybody else would have a tax cut. It makes absolutely no sense for somebody that earns twice the median salary in the UK, which by the way is £50,751 a year, to be paying the same tax rate as somebody that earns £50 million a year. Those with the broadest shoulders should take the most weight. They can do it. They can afford it. And you're not buying extra votes by giving them a tax cut. They're going to vote for you anyway. That got reversed. The cuts to the public service expenditure got paused. The other tax cuts got reversed. Every single policy that was announced by Kwasi Kwarteng at the fiscal statement in around about the 28th of September 2022 has been reversed, with one exception, and that exception is bankers' bonuses. They decided to remove a cap on bankers' bonuses so they can now be much higher than they were previously. Bankers, by the way, generally in those areas, if you receive a banker's bonus, you're going to be earning several times the national median salary. But apparently capping that so that they only earn an enormous amount of money as opposed to earning a fucking enormous amount of money is unpopular and has been kept. That's the only policy. Also, by the way, we had incredible scenes yesterday. The things that really did break the camel's fragile back, which was that first off, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, resigned. Now, part of me thinks she resigned so that she couldn't get sacked, so she could also then stand as a candidate for Prime Minister next. Resigned. She resigned. And then the other thing that we had is that there was a vote in the houses around fracking. By the way, if you voted for fracking, the Conservative Party, when they were elected in 2019, which feels like 1,000 years ago, one of their election manifesto promises was to make sure that fracking remained excluded. And if you voted for fracking, what you were directly doing is that you were standing in the face of and discarding one of the very policies upon which your party got elected. So what you're saying is you're going against a manifesto promise. And if you voted against fracking, which, by the way, if you vote against fracking, that means you vote for the Conservative manifesto promise upon which you were elected. It was regarded as a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister, which means and then you would have the whip taken away from you, which means that if you did what you promised to do and what you were elected to do, you would be removed from the whip, and therefore you'd be pretty much ostracised and exiled from the political party. This is madness, complete madness. Anyone that says that the Conservative Party have a mandate to rule, they don't. Firstly, that was 3 prime ministers ago. Secondly, you've spat in the face of the manifesto promises upon which you were elected. Those promises being no fracking, fair taxes, and you've crashed the pound, because the pound has gone to its lowest ever historical level against the dollar, where it was £1.07 for every dollar, which is great if you're an American tourist, not so great if you're actually trying to buy or spend any money in America and you're English. You've tanked the interest rates in the economy, so interest rates have gone up from 1.9% on mortgages to 6%, which means that housing has now become unaffordable unless you're incredibly rich. And Liz Truss killed the Queen. I mean, this is pretty exciting. So for in 6 weeks, she's killed the Queen. Not literally killed the Queen, but the Queen has died on her watch. She's tanked the Conservative Party. She's crashed the economy. She nearly destroyed the pensions market. She's destroyed the mortgage market. She's taken the promise of home ownership away from thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are remortgaging at the moment. When it comes to remortgaging or mortgages, the thing that's most critical is not necessarily how much money you're borrowing, but affordability. So affordability is linked to the interest rate. So for example, if you have an interest rate of 2% or 3% over 25 years, effectively the total cost of ownership of your mortgage is twice the value of the mortgage. That's how much you're going to pay over the next 25 years. If your interest rate goes from, let's say, 2% to 6%, the price of what you're going to be borrowing over the next 25 years isn't double the house price, it's 4 times the house price. You can't afford to get the mortgage. And so, therefore, if you have a mortgage and you're remortgaging right now, the Conservatives have stolen tens of thousands of pounds from you, and very possibly the hope that you may have had of actually owning your own property and not being in the rented underclass. This is not a judgment call about people that rent. I was one for a very, very, very long time. And when I bought my house, it was a very small window of affordability. I had maybe 6, 8 months where the market conditions were such that I was earning just about enough money to get on just the very bottom level of the most risky mortgages. I couldn't have got a mortgage at any other time in my life unless I'd bought when I was about 22 and I paid £44,000 for a house that now sells for £400,000. Affordability is the key because the affordability has pushed up the interest rates and the cost of the homes. So what we do have over the past 6 weeks, it's crazy at 6 weeks. Over the past 6 weeks, you have had a government that's destroyed the mortgage market, that has nearly destroyed the pensions market, that has crashed the economy, got spiralling interest rates. We're living in a state of hyperinflation, huge political turmoil, multiple Home Secretaries, Chancellor of the Exchequers, and we then had the point where we had the vote on fracking yesterday, where apparently there were physical altercations by people that work for the Conservative Party, pushing, shoving, and forcing other members of the Conservative Party to vote in favour of the thing that deliberately went against their manifesto promises. And I believe, under the rules of the 1922 committee, which is the committee that regulates the activity inside the Conservative Party, that if you win a leadership contest, you cannot be subject to another leadership contest within 12 months of your success. But the number of no confidence votes that went into the 1922 committee within 6 weeks was sufficient to, had that rule not been in place, to have forced a leadership contest. And in all probability, the conversation that happened this morning between the 1922 committee and Liz Truss was very much along the lines of, if you do not resign, we will change the rules and we will force a leadership contest upon you. Britain is a global laughingstock politically. A reputation is hard won and easily lost. And Britain's reputation on the global stage right now is of a joke. We're a circus. People voted for the clowns and they got a circus. I don't know who's going to be next Prime Minister. As I've said before, I've submitted my letter of interest to the Conservative Party. I've told them, even though I'm not a Conservative, I will be Prime Minister if that's what they want, because I sure as heck fire couldn't be worse than the guys that they had previously over the past couple of years. We are living in crazy, fucked up times, and there is no two ways about it. I have never seen anything like it, and I crave the boring hand of sweet, deadening competence that steadily sails the ship through the choppy waters. Because when you look at the political world outside, there's a heck of a lot of stuff going on outside of there. We don't need our own self-invented, completely unnecessary crises. Brexit has failed. Full stop. The economic experiment that has been disaster capitalism, that has been pushed by Farage and executed by Boris Johnson, of stepping away from the EU, it's failed. People were angry before. They had bogeymen that they could point to. They could point to the unemployed, the immigrants, Europe, the Guardian. And now Suella Braverman yesterday said it was it Tofu-eating Guardian reading Wokerati. And I'm kind of going, those aren't the people that are responsible for the economic failures here. The economic failures that the UK has stem from a lack of investment in the UK, and the lack of investment in the UK comes from three areas. One, Britain has no intellectual political credibility anymore. Secondly, the costs of trading in the UK are very high thanks to Brexit. We have put obstacles in the way. We have not been set free. We have been set aghast. We have been set apart and adrift and just cast into the waters of the world without that set of economic agreements. And the third part is economic. Britain doesn't have the money, and Britain doesn't have the money because the lie of trickle-down economics does not work. Britain can't afford to carry on like this. And that's where we are. Liz Truss, Prime Minister for 44 days before she resigns, will now be seen as nothing more than a joke and a punchline. Her political legacy, as the BBC's commentator said this morning, will be nothing more than being the answer to the pub quiz question, who is the shortest serving British Prime Minister? I cannot wait for a change. I don't want us to be in the position where after Theresa May, after Boris Johnson, after Liz Truss, that we have the fourth Prime Minister in a row who's been elected by a tiny percentage of the British population. I believe it is time for a general election, and too much has changed for the Conservatives to credibly claim that they have a mandate from the British public. They had a mandate from the British public 3 years ago, pre-Brexit, pre-COVID, pre-Johnson, pre-Truss. They do not have the mandate anymore. In fact, they don't have the support anymore. The polling numbers are terrible. I think it is time to call for a general election, and I cannot wait, because democracy counts. Every vote counts, not just the votes of the Conservative Party members. Up the revolution, comrades, and next time I'll be talking about pop music, which will be considerably more fun, and I won't be anywhere near so annoyed. So, stay beautiful, and see you soon. Bye.